Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Vox Podcast. Mike Erie, Tim Stafford, still missing Bonnie. We love Bonnie. Check out our new podcast, Tim Shell. Gombus, new podcast, Faith Improvised. Both of them have their first episodes out as we are recording now.
Yeah. And
Bonnie is full Bonnie and Gombus is full Gombus. So you're not getting diluted either. Nope. And we love being a part of that family. So that's fun for us to see happen. Tim and I, however, are left in the unfortunate place of being two white men stuck on a podcast together, which differentiates us in no way, shape, or form from all the other podcasts out there. So what we thought, I think we recognize losing a feminine theological voice is a big deal, and the mayonnaise thing is a big deal, and so what we've learned, if we've learned anything from paying attention these last several months, is the importance of elevating voices that don't normally get elevated, and so we feel like we want to elevate probably the voice that has been the most minimized in American Christianity. And that is the voice of our Palestinian friend Jesus, who, I don't know if you know this, but there was this fellow, not a white man, member of a minority group in the first century, tradesman for most of his adult life. But, this Jesus guy, I think, pretty easy to hijack in times like these, or pretty easy to ignore in times like these, right? We are sitting in the middle, as we record this, of a massive pandemic, racial tension that has not been seen since, at least publicly seen, and wrestled with since the 60s. An economic disaster, though we're still not sure what the cost of that's going to be long term. An election season that is already howlingly and maddeningly insane. A church that is being dismantled in terms of its lack of integrity on all sorts of issues. And so here we are.
Where are we?
Yeah, exactly. And so we thought, why don't we take a look at the most famous teaching of Jesus, called the Sermon on the Mount, and let's spend some podcast time going through Jesus's teaching, and this kind of fits into a question I think we got in on Facebook. Tim, you want to pull that one up?
Yes. Somebody wrote in and said, hey. They didn't say hey. I added that, actually. So they just started with, a question I have is, where do I start? I'm a Christian, and I've gone through the deconstructing. A lot has changed for me, and I don't know where to restart. Y'all, along with the Holy Post, have been very helpful in challenging me. I feel like I don't know how to read the Bible, and it is paralyzing. Thoughts?
Yeah, good question. So interestingly enough, the Holy Post, one of the co-hosts there is a guy named Sky, who's a friend of mine, and he just wrote a book on the Sermon on the Mount, interestingly enough. That is such a great question. And about the Bible, holy moly, there's a lot to say there. I mean, that should be our next thing, is just sitting in that question, for a couple of months. There is hope, and I think there is a way to come back to the scriptures, taking both them seriously and us and our world seriously. That you don't have to dismiss either to really engage with what's happening in there. So I think there's hope there that I hope to demonstrate in the future. Yeah. Regarding where do you start, I mean, I know this is self-serving, but my goodness, there's no better spot than this Jesus fellow and his magnum opus. And for me, when I get into the world of politics, in the world of the Old Testament or the world of Paul, man, I get so easily lost. I get so easily disoriented, and there's something about encountering Jesus, seeking to kind of unlearn what we've learned, as Yoda would have it. That I think is so powerful. So we're going to spend some time just in the voice, listening to the voice of Jesus, and trying to take that very, very seriously. And I think I know there will be much that speaks into our world. I mean, directly. And so if you're willing, young questioner, I would encourage you to stick around and read it with us. This will be a great, the Sermon on the Mount begins with a bunch of blessings. Blessed are the poor in spirit. And it ends with Jesus saying, if you take my words seriously and put them into practice, you're like somebody that built a house on a really solid foundation. And in the midst, he covers anger, lust, murder, adultery, divorce, verbal manipulation. What does it mean to be good? What does it mean to be religious? What does it mean to love? How it is that we're to be Christian in the world? I mean, he covers power, deception, false leaders, good leaders. I mean, he covers just everything. And so I think there'll be a lot there. And if we're going to reboot in the light of deconstruction, I don't think there's any better place to start, Yeah. That his words and just sitting in the Gospels have been absolutely life-giving to me in this. Not only in this season particularly, but in the season of life that's the deconstructing part.
Yeah.
So the goal of this podcast today, Tim and I, we want to tell you why the Sermon on the Mount is one of the best things we can be reading and paying attention to right now. And because I have two fears of going into this. The first one is that people will just think this is some nice moral instruction from Jesus to our private spirituality. And it just makes us little better tiny Christians, and we can dismiss it because Jesus really doesn't have anything to say about systemic injustice, racism, sexual orientation, gender theory, critical race theory. I mean, he doesn't have anything to say on these things, and the goal for us is just to be nice and keeps Jesus private in our warm little hearts, and it's cool. And that is so not what Jesus is doing in the Sermon on the Mount. and the other fear is that we read the sermon through the lens of Republican, Democrat, conservative, progressive, because that's how we've been discipled. It's not our churches that have disciples us mostly. It's mostly the ways in which the Republican and Democrat play themselves out. And so we want to take this episode to dismantle those false views of the sermon and to insist that it's far more radical, revolutionary, and challenging to every single one who will listen to it than I think we give it credit for. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So a couple of thoughts as we start. In the Sermon on the Mount, what Jesus does is that he defines our way of life in the world, and that by definition is political. It doesn't mean it has political implications. It means that Jesus and his message are inherently political. Now, we have to deal with two misunderstandings immediately. The first misunderstanding is that the Sermon on the Mount has been misread for generations. The early Catholic Church believed, or the medieval Catholic Church believed, that it only applied to the spiritual elites, the priests. So it was way too rigorous for kind of normal, nominal Christians. And so in their view, it applied to the priesthood. There was the Lutheran view that came around as a result of that said that, no, it applies to everybody, but just in your private spiritual life as opposed to your public secular life. And so the distinction there isn't between the elites and the regulars. It's no, everyone's involved, but this is just internal religious conviction. I grew up in a theological system that said the Sermon on the Mount was for the future, it is the ethics of the kingdom when the kingdom comes for 1,000-year millennial reign. This was the dispensational teaching I was taught. So
we have the it's only for the higher ups.
Yep.
We have hey, it's just for your private time, quiet time. This is not for how you live your life out in the world necessarily, but just kind of behind closed doors or within the church walls maybe.
Yep.
And then we have the left behind version.
We've left the Sermon on the Mount behind. Yes.
There.
Yes. And then even today in some reform circles, I mean, there's a guy I hugely respect who on social media, he was like, the great thing about the Sermon on the Mount is it shows us how much we need Jesus. And I responded with, okay, but then why does he tell us to obey it right at the end of it? Like, yeah. I disagree. And so the one danger is that people will take the Sermon on the Mount and think it's someone else, somewhere else, doing something else, as opposed to, no, this is the clearest outline of the way of Jesus.
Somebody really needs this.
Yes, yes. I wish my friends would listen to this. And so that's on the one hand, that's one landmine. The other landmine is when people hear that Christianity is political, they think what that means is that Christianity is partisan. And we've seen Christianity be political in the Crusades and in the Constantinian era of the Roman Empire. And we've seen Christianity be political starting in the 80s around the abortion issue and around LGBTQ protections and rights. And every time the church has been political in that sense, it has been awful, and it has been antichrist in many ways. And so there is a very good skepticism about, are we sure we want to say that? I want to say that Christianity isn't partisan, but it is political. And what I want to do for the rest of the podcast, I want Tim and I to kind of go through what that means. We're going to title this episode, Neither Right Nor Left Nor Religious. And this phrase comes from a chapter title in a book by Lee Camp, C-A-M-P, called Scandalous Witness. And he puts forth a Christian vision of politics that is really good. And there are some sections that we'll get into, hopefully, that I'm just channeling him. All errors and wrong statements are mine. Everything brilliant is him. That's kind of how this will work.
I was going to say that was a great time to put it on someone else.
No, I mean it's absolutely compelling. It's 172 pages, not a huge read, but thick. It is dense, but I recommend it. And I want to use some of his material to frame how it is we're going to approach the sermon, because as a podcast, we've always said we want to be safe to talk about anything, and so there's so much happening in our world that we can be and should be reacting to and talking about. And so what I don't want people to think we're doing is, well, we lost Bonnie, and we're not comfortable just having two white dudes pontificate, and so we're just going to go back to Jesus. And I don't want people to think that the Jesus we're pursuing is just the purveyor of the systematic injustices and everything that is getting associated with sort of conservative politics and even some theological conservative positions. And so I want to talk about how it is that Jesus is political. What's that mean? Because that frames what he's doing in the sermon.
Yeah, and we think that maybe I won't say we. Let me just start with I, and then Mike, you can disagree or not. I don't want to. But part of the thing that I think in the last few months of listening and learning is, offering a place for marginalized voices to have a voice, and B, also, like, as two white men, we have a duty to we have a really significant part in dismantling the power structure that has been built that favors white men and white men's voices. So there's a role to play in kind of acknowledging that and picking that apart. Somebody phrased it as it's white male power over, meaning that there's a thing of we have a long history of white male power over. It's a power structure, a power dynamic in which we have assumed control over other people, and kind of picking that apart through a lot of this too, I think.
Yes,
is very
exactly.
important.
We want to show how deeply Jesus engages the issues of our world.
Yeah.
And that we don't get off by saying, hey man, that's just my private spirituality, or hey, that's politics but not religion, or no, we want to put to death all of that. So let's go through this just sort of briefly. The way of Jesus isn't right. It's not the way of conservative politics. The fact that many of us think being theologically conservative and being politically conservative are the same thing. I mean, that just shows you, to be honest, how deep the blasphemy goes, right? I mean, the way of Jesus cannot be captured by the conservative Republican establishment. Jesus explicitly rejected Republican conceptions of power. And refused to take up a mantle that would install him as a crowning ruler, enforcing his morality by fiat over the nations or something. And likewise, Jesus, and this one's harder for me to hear, but likewise, Jesus refused the way of the left, the way of social activism for its own sake. The really watered down notion of progress that is so different from his eschatological vision of the kingdom coming. I think he would object to the way both right and left exclude and name call and judge and shame. I don't think Jesus would agree with any of our political maneuverings around how it is we talk about these issues and what we think about each other in the midst of this. I think Jesus absolutely would say your and my identity as an American Christian is a Christian, and then very distantly second as an American, and then very distantly later on down the road as whatever political party.
Right.
Is this making sense?
Yeah.
Camp has this great line about, and please don't read into this. See, the fact that I have to tread so carefully here just shows how discipled we've been by our politics. This is all very raw nerve. Oh my goodness, yes. There's so much anger here. I feel so much anger. We're actually re-recording this because I was so angry in the first time we went through this. Tim and I about 45 minutes in went, I'm not sure. So I took some CBD brownies and
there it is.
I don't even know. I don't even know what that is. But I hear it relaxes you. That's what I hear. I think what we're seeing is, if we're not careful, there are fundamentalisms on both sides. And I think Jesus stands opposed to that. The way of the kingdom does not come from silencing people, and the way of the kingdom does not come from name calling and shaming. I think the way of the kingdom is much deeper than that. So I think one of the things we'll try to show is that Jesus' way is neither the way of the left or the way of the right. And that's hard, right? Depending on what your persuasion is. Part of the reason you're that persuasion is because you think this better represents the way of Jesus in the world. But what Camp does that's super interesting is that he calls that into question by saying that both conservatism, and let's call it both Republicans and Democrats, are not arguing about two separate political parties. They're arguing about the best way to embody one political theory, which is the political liberalism of the Enlightenment. And when we say liberalism in this sense, this doesn't mean progressive. Liberalism in this sense has to do with individual liberty.
Yeah.
And it's the maximizing of individual rights and opportunities over against the institutional structures of the church and the state and the king. And so there was an incredible movement that birthed America, ultimately, that said that the individual with their enlightened intellect should have a right to self-determination when it comes to politics, economics, and so on. And so what you have, and this is, I'm channeling Camp here, is that you have a set of assumptions that characterize classical liberalism. Those assumptions are things like freedom of religion, an individual's right to move up and down the social ladder as they please, or as they work, as opportunity provides. The free exchange of goods and services. I mean, those sorts of things that are just embedded in American culture. He traces back those ideas to the Enlightenment and says, what's fascinating is that both Republicans and Democrats share all of those assumptions. The problem is that they disagree over where the rights of government or where the rights of the individual versus the power of government should be expressed. Right. So Republicans favor maximizing liberty when regards to guns and regarding like corporations and people with their money. And Democrats believe in maximizing liberty around the individual, your individual body, your individual sexual ethics. But Camp makes this brilliant point that in both cases, you're sharing a set of assumptions that themselves would be called into question by the kingdom of God. In other words, to be a Republican or Democrat isn't to argue about the best way of being Christian in the world. It's arguing about the best way to manifest the ideals of classical liberalism as a political theory. But that, according to Camp, is called into question by the kingdom of God even before we get to Republican and Democratic partisanship.
It's not left, it's not right, it's not middle.
No.
We're talking about a starting point that supersedes all of that.
Exactly. So like one of the examples of one of the examples of what liberalism doesn't do a good job of, and I don't mean political liberalism as a party, but as a theory, is that there's no shared conception of what is good or what the good life is.
Right.
And we see that now with our mask debates, right? I remember when in the 80s, when my parents were upset that the government was telling us to wear seatbelts. I mean, the government has no right to tell us to wear seatbelts, and it was a liberty issue. And that's wild. And today you get the same thing from people who refuse to wear masks, and especially if they're told to. And so we have this incredible mask-wearing conflict that is simply the inevitable result of people who have been told their whole lives that what matters most, is your individual preference, desire, and self-expression, and there is no shared common good to sacrifice for.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's one thing the kingdom would call into question. The second thing the kingdom would call into the question is the notion of liberty itself. In the way we've internalized our political views, liberty means the absence of rules, restraints, ethics, or morals. The virtue tradition and the Christian conception of freedom is the exact opposite. Yeah. It's freedom within ethics, morality, rules, and so on. And so the point Camp is making is that to say the Sermon on the Mount is political doesn't mean it's right or left. It's based on a set of assumptions that doesn't even allow our Republican and Democratic conversation to get off the ground.
Yeah.
Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So our friend that wrote in on Facebook, who has been going through a deconstructing process of faith and the Bible, in many ways, this is a great point for rebuilding just through the words of Jesus, but also in a this political season where things are very contentious, this is also a point of deconstructing and rebuilding that as well. So this is a multifaceted, let's see what Jesus has to say so that we might better embody that.
That's right. As a community.
Yeah.
This isn't just me and my private individual believings.
Yes. Yeah.
This is us being a political entity in the world that is good news to the rest of the world. And we are so far from that. So we have people
you kind of have it bundled by for God so loved the world and then go, right? Those are kind of bookends that this is in the middle of.
Right, exactly.
Like,
this is how we go.
He cares about the world. This is why he's here.
Right.
The one that we live in, that we have to operate in and not be private within. And then...
That's right. We are political.
Yes.
But we're not political in the cringy way that Christians have been known to be political, because our politics consists of an entirely different set of assumptions and values. And what Jesus will outline in the Sermon on the Mount is, because all it means to be political is to group together and discern how you'll live your common life together.
Yeah.
I mean, that is what the New Testament is about.
Yeah.
How do people...
I think we said this in the first recording, I can't remember, but this is this governmental system is... I'm doing this, so this is why I say we, but I'm looking at all this. I can only frame this through a Republican, Democrat, American system. But this is, we're talking about global. So Jesus's intent in this is not just, I think we cipher everything through an American lens, naturally. But this is so much more than that.
Yes, exactly right.
But it is where we are.
So it's neither right nor left, nor is it religious. Now, camp means that one of the assumptions that went into classic liberalism is the idea that religion consists of a set of privatized internal believings about what happens when you die and should not inform common public life. And we've all agreed with that assumption. And so because under that understanding, Christianity then has nothing to say about the social and political issues of our day, we fill that void with the nation state and the partisan representative of the nation state, right? So what our frenzy to be Republican or Democrat shows about us is that our Christianity has yet to fully inform the ways in which we're seeing the world. And the reason it hasn't done that isn't because we're good people or good Christians. It's because our whole thing is built on the assumption that the exercise of religion in the public square is by definition a harmful thing. Yeah. And history certainly proved that it's been a harmful thing. What we're trying to recapture is the idea that the church is a political entity making a political statement about the lordship of Jesus, practicing a kind of politics in their life together that bears witness to the reality of Jesus and also calls into question the common sense assumptions of the politics of the world. That's what he's doing here. And to understand that, you can't locate Jesus as just giving us private morality the way we've assumed, nor is he giving partisan politics. He's introducing a radically different political entity into the world. That is and we'll get to this in a second, but that's why America could never be a Christian nation. Because what Jesus is attempting to do has nothing to do with what nations turn out to be.
Right.
So
he subverted all that to begin with.
Yes.
Way before America was even a thought.
A twinkle in the world's eye.
There we go. I was trying to think of how to say that like that, but subverting the Caesar and subverting what people were expecting him to be.
Exactly.
Political ideals.
Jesus got it from both sides because on the one hand, Jesus was very political. he wasn't, and guys, this is the most important point we're going to make today. He wasn't crucified because he was spiritual. He wasn't crucified because he was leading private devotions and giving us inspirational quotes about how to be better people. Right. He was freaking crucified because the religious power saw that he was threatening their institutions, and the political power saw that he was threatening their institutions. He wasn't doing that by just being a nice moral guy. All right? Yeah. And not only that, then Jesus gets blasted by people of his day because he's not political in the right way. So right. On the one hand, you have the unmistakable fact that Jesus is political, and his church was political and still is, but it's politics of such a different sort that many of his contemporaries refuse to follow him because of the kind of politics that he defined his people around. Yeah. Right? That we're going to conquer the Romans by sacrificial love and suffering and forgiveness. I mean, come freaking on. What a load of crap that must have been to the Jews of his day. I mean, truly. Right? And that's why they say at the very end, right in the book of Acts, when Jesus is ascending, they're like, dude, are you okay? Are you now going to restore the kingdom to Israel? So Jesus got it on both sides. He was political enough to die, but he was political in the wrong way so as to be accepted by the majority of his countrymen and women.
Yeah.
Oh.
And it, like, even the people that are close to him, you know, with that, like, with the Roman, conquer the Roman, and then Peter's going to share the story of Jesus with the centurion just because... And it was just like, and Peter had his pre-notions about no. This is a Roman dude. This is like a hardcore Roman dude, and you know, he's told no, this is for him as well. So even within the tight circle, this preconceived notion of who this is for and how it should look was being challenged from day one.
Right. So Jesus was not coming to give us a better way of governing the world. He was not giving us a better way of embodying liberalism as it's classically conceived, nor was he coming to give us a better way to be religious, right? He was introducing something called the kingdom of God, which, and we could spend loads of episodes on this, was a political identity, a political entity that had some things in common with what God was doing with Israel, but in other ways, because Israel was a geopolitical fixed nation with borders, boundaries, walls, and laws. The church, as it expressed the kingdom, could never be expressed in those sort of boundaried geopolitical kinds of ways because the kingdom was far bigger. So one of the points that Camp makes that I just absolutely love is that he distinguishes, and I think this is the chapter title of one of the chapters, is America has never been, nor will be, or could be a Christian nation. Because a nation state, by definition, and a Christian, by definition, are antithetical to each other. So he gives the following examples. He's like, hey, nation state is a geopolitical entity with geographical boundaries. The kingdom is every tongue, tribe, nation, no geographical boundaries to protect. The nation state has laws and policies for citizenship. There are pledges of allegiance and promises and oaths. The church, the kingdom, has its own oath, right? It is baptism. It is for all of those who call upon the name of Jesus and are baptized. That is what constitutes the political entity of the church, which makes, by the way, baptism a very, very politically subversive act. Nation states enforce walls and borders because they have to. Christ preached an open table, and the early church practiced it. The state has to rely on the threat of coercive power, whereas the church, if it embodies the kingdom, consists of influence through self-sacrificial love. The nation state is a self-interested agenda for its own preservation in the world. Yeah. And we, the kingdom, are given the ministry of reconciliation instead. In the West, our political vision is about maximizing life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness as defined by the classical liberalism of our forefathers, right? That post-Enlightenment, hey, we're here protecting the values of the autonomous individual, as opposed to the Christian conception, which is a community reflecting the way of Jesus through the denial of self and the transformation into Christ-likeness. I mean, holy moly, right? So let's just say all of that's true. Then by definition, you could never have a Christian nation.
Yeah.
Because such a thing is a contradiction in terms, right?
Yeah, such a tough conversation that I've had so many times.
Well, camp, dude, I'm just saying, camp, go camp. Now, the kingdom, and this is where it gets super tricky. The kingdom is both now and not yet. Right? We talked about this before. Jesus has come and Jesus is coming. Jesus has come and defeated the powers, but the powers aren't defeated yet. He'll return. So there's an inauguration of Jesus's kingdom and power and authority, but there's still a consummation in the future that we wait for. Now, I know that's horribly confusing, but the New Testament wrestles with it. Like Paul will speak of salvation like it's already happened in the past, like it's currently happening in the present, and like it's going to happen in the future. And all of those are true. We have been saved, we are being saved, and we will be saved.
Yeah.
So there's this two-stage sort of process where the end of history has already begun in the midst of the present. So the end of history, according to the Christian conception, is something called new creation, which is where the purposes of God align with the purposes expressed on the earth, right? And that God remakes so that death, sin, disease, all of that stuff no longer exists.
No more COVIDs.
No more COVIDs, right? Nothing. No more baldness, no more calories. That's in the Hebrew. Now, the church as witness bearers to the kingdom, we're called to live something called proleptically, which means we're to live now as if the future were already here. So the images we get of new creation, of course, are every tongue, tribe, and nation proclaiming the goodness of God. So what do we do in the meantime? We fight the ethnic, tribal battles, the white superiority, the explicit racism of some forms of Christianity. We fight that now.
Yeah.
Because we're embodying what's coming.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So we live proleptically in that regard, right? Which
the
postures
now and not yet gives us a very specific role to play. We're not just sitting and waiting.
Correct. Yes. That's so good, Tim. That means we are not allowed to withdraw.
Yeah.
We're not allowed to be passive. Nor are we allowed to try to dominate, because it's the way of Jesus. But, and here's the key point, we're super realistic about the reach of good government.
Yeah.
In other words, there isn't any perfect utopia waiting for us politically that will usher in the kingdom. And so as people whose citizenship is based in a different place, we're free to interact, to reject, to bless, to redeem all parts of all parties of all systems. Because we're beholden, right, to nothing in terms of an ultimate set of allegiance or identity.
Yeah.
And so we live with great realism because the kingdom is not yet. And we believe that there are forces at work in the world that are still purveyors of death and sin and evil. We don't think evil is just in the human heart. We think it's systematized. It's not just systematized too, it's in the human heart, right? It's both, right? You can't just cure racism by having everyone come to Jesus. That's not how this works. And that wasn't the remedy Jesus called for. Right? You defeat racism, and I don't mean in any ultimate sense, but the role of the church is to begin to embody those practices that are anti-racist now.
Yeah.
And it's a testament to our prostituting ourselves to the American conception of what it is to be political, that it's taken this, for me and us to wake up to how deep this goes.
Yeah.
So we live by hope because the kingdom has come and we see the goodness of Jesus all around us, but we're realistic because we still see the reality of evil. And this is the last last kind of thing I'll try to say. The politics of the tribe of Jesus that we're going to go into in the Sermon on the Mount are explicit refusals of the politics of empire. And so they're specific repudiations, beginning with who Jesus blesses, of the politics of empire. And I don't mean empire just in terms of a political nation. I mean empire in terms of how it's even practiced by institutional religion.
Yeah.
Right? This is a repudiation of power. And so people rightly get twitchy when we talk about Christianity being political. And I would argue it's been because they haven't seen Christianity be political. What they've seen is a whole bunch of us who have misaligned ourselves and misidentified and distorted what God is doing in the world and wants to do in the world, to the point where we look to the nation state to define for us the ultimate realities of what American life should look like.
Yeah. Ugh.
And how could we not, in such a context, spend a lot of our time, energy, and money conflicting with each other about such things? So to say it again, the politics of Jesus do not include at all the self-righteous moralism of coercive power, whether it's from the Supreme Court, the president, or the Congress.
Yeah, I mean, it goes like at the beginning, the white male power over. This is a similar idea, like.
Yep, we've just baptized it in Christian terms.
Yeah.
So we refuse the politics of deception and spin. We instead are truth tellers. We bear witness to the truth. And that just doesn't mean we sit in our towers and we pronounce judgment upon the world. That's not what we mean by truth telling. Truth telling, first and foremost, is telling the truth about us and our house and how crappy we are. And then in the midst of our weakness, boasting about our Jesus. It's not just sitting around saying, "Hey guys, believe the Trinity or burn."
Yeah, I don't know how long ago it was that you said this, but it was I've used it a lot since then. But just simply putting in the difference between peacekeeping and peacemaking,
totally,
and how those two things are carried out and how they're lived, and that we are not status quo keepers, that we're going in and we're peacemakers. And I think that
right.
kind of, as an analogy, that kind of system is a lot like this.
Yes, exactly right. And just along those lines, we reject any form of ethnic superiority, racism, sexism, or nationalism by definition. And instead, we practice the common table and hospitality to all. We have different social orderings than the world does. Now, the fact that we don't, again, just shows the depth and breadth of our sin as a community and as individuals. Absolutely. We refuse to chaplain the state and just bless its state thing and sprinkle a little Christian dust over it and say, "Oh, that's okay. Let's go pray for our drone strikes. You know, it's cool." And we refuse to prostitute ourselves to the state in the way that we did in supporting slavery, and the way that we have in oppressing women, the way that we have in oppressing sexual minorities, right? I mean, we have prostituted ourselves. And instead, we practice the politics of repentance. We are constantly learning, and the more we learn, the more we have to repent of. And so we should be the best listeners and the best apologizers and the best forgivers on the planet, because all of that is ours already in Jesus. Right? I mean, it's not, this isn't rocket science, right? This is the politics of mercy and justice and forgiveness and generosity and reconciliation, right? This is what the politics of Jesus are, where the tax collector and the zealot, where AOC and Donald Trump can sit across the table if in some incredible world they were some church painted a compelling picture of Jesus where they could sit across the table and break bread together. I mean, that's what we're talking about. That's what Paul calls us to when he talks about the new humanity, right? And so we reject We reject debt as a means of power.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, we pray a prayer that says, forgive us our debts as we forgive those who are indebted to us. We reject retaliation, right? I mean, Jesus is so clear about retaliation and love of enemies. We refuse the way of exploiting others. And this all sounds so horribly unrealistic. And that point right there is the biggest indictment of all.
Yeah.
We have experienced such a failure of discipleship throughout the whole.
This seems counter.
Yeah, that this is against everything we know. Right? It's absolutely nuts. It's nuts. Oh. And we reject coercive violence.
Yeah.
The superpower mythos, we reject it. Now, my theologically astute friends will be like, dude, this sounds a lot like Anabaptist theology. And it is. Anabaptists, in the midst of taking the Sermon on the Mount as for elites, or as just showing us our need for Jesus, or just for our private life, Anabaptists, you would enjoy reading about them. But the Anabaptists believed that the way of Jesus was to be applied for all Christians in all spheres of life. And so even if we're politicians, if my being in politics forces me to compromise the way of Jesus, then I should not be in politics. I mean, this is how radical this was. This totally goes against be what you want to be, do what you want to do, right? I mean, that sort of autonomous, like my rights, my liberty, my freedom of expression, nothing should infringe upon that. And there's truth to that. Absolutely, right? Jesus never forced a soul into his kingdom. So the freedom to choose, all of that I think is Jesus-y. Where we get lost in it is where we begin to just think that any conception of telos or the good or of a common good or a common direction is an infringement. That if there's anything that would infringe upon my ability to do what I want, when I want, and how I want, that's where I'm like, that's not the way of freedom. That's not what real liberty turns out to be, according to this Jesus. So here's the deal. Do politics, as Americans define them, does that matter? Oh, it matters immensely. It matters immensely. And we're seeing the carnage of it not mattering, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Oh my goodness. It matters, immensely. But the politics of the American system have to be relativized to be of lesser importance and lesser allegiance than they currently occupy in the imaginations and hearts of many American Christians.
Yeah.
And when they are practiced, have to be practiced in a way congruent with the way of Jesus.
Yeah.
Or they're not Christian. I mean, and that fundamentally, is the call of the Sermon on the Mount to us 2,000 years later. I remember a friend years and years and years ago had a fish on her car, like one of those Christian fish.
Oh, Jesus, yeah.
Little Jesus sticker fish on the bumper, but drove like really angrily, flipping people off and whatever. Yeah. And she came and she was like, "What do I do?" And so you really have two options, right? Yeah. Option one, you drive as an expression of love your neighbor.
Yeah.
Or you take the damn fish off the car.
Yeah. And do the private version of right?
Yeah.
That's kind of a modern day example of that.
Absolutely. And so what I want to say is, listen, if you want to be an ass on social media, if you want to treat people awfully, if you want to spend time and energy doing things that Jesus explicitly forbids and outlaws among his people, then great. Just take the Christian off of your masthead. Just take the Christian off of your bio. All right? I mean, that's all we're asking. Yeah. Yeah, just believe Jesus.
Or just don't do that stuff.
Or, like me, we admit our freaking sin and we repent and walk the way of repentance.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, I think we talked about this, not this specifically, but Gombas multiple episodes ago, but he was talking about politics, and his idea of politics was practicing it within just your community, like your...
Yeah, that's your politics.
Exactly, yeah. So the transformation seems more, doesn't seem as like out there when you think about doing it within your immediate environment of the city that you're in.
I'm so glad you brought it up, Tim. Yeah, the primary political unit of Christians is church.
Yeah.
And so yes, your job isn't to be political in some ultimate sense of sharing memes, but it's to practice. The only way to get good at this is to practice with other sinful people.
Yeah, I mean, there are really good memes out there, but yes.
There are some great memes.
It's a new art form.
One of my favorite memes is this really heavy, got to be a 400-pound bald guy jumping off the top rope in a wrestling ring. And there's this guy laying on his back, another wrestler that's just looking up at this huge guy coming down at him. And the meme is, the top part is my dad jokes. And the bottom part is, with the guy that's about ready to get crushed, my ungrateful family. And and I really resemble that one. So
yeah.
So our goal, and the reason we're going so crazy on this is, at least for me, I don't think we can approach the Sermon on the Mount and hear it rightly without doing all of this pre-work. We almost have to unlearn some stuff before we can learn some stuff.
Yeah, Yoda.
Yeah, Yoda said it right. And so, our goal is to be in a lot of dialogue with you in the midst of this, because this would be a failure if all we do is talk about how Jesus informs our private morality. And it would be a failure if we're not showing how it is that the ways of Jesus would drastically affect the issues that are totally compelling in our world, right? I mean, Jesus gets to the very heart of issues, and the way of Jesus is a way forward in the midst of racial tension, in the midst of socioeconomic injustice, and in the midst of socioeconomic injustice, in the midst of a pandemic. Right? I mean, there are ways of being in the world that are Christian, and there are ways of being in the world that are not. And we just want to simply allow Jesus to define those for us,
Yeah, this time period is forcing us, man, what a crazy year, forcing us to slow down physically and economically and socially, and kind of look at ourselves. We're being forced to stop and look at ourselves in a lot of different ways. So it just, I don't know, this just seems like such a great time to do this and to, pick apart why we're doing what we're doing. But yeah, we've always tried to build, as much as you can build a community within the virtual environment. That has always been a goal. And I think that this series for the next couple months or whatever is a great time, to email in at the hello@Vox podcast, and to use the Facebook community group and different things to kind of to wrestle with us. Cause I'm going to be wrestling through this quite a bit. So
yeah, me too.
I think it's a great time for us to all just kind of, get in it together and push back and talk
and just, and the point that Jesus will make is this isn't about anybody else, right? This is about me. I'm doing this for me because I need it.
Yes.
I need it. And if it helps, great. But I need this.
Yeah.
I need a radical overhaul of how I see myself in the world. I've made mistakes in social media. I've expressed anger in ways that are not productive and helpful. And I need to be retrained. I need to be, shall I say it, equipped.
There it is.
There it is. It's a word Tim and I disagree over. He loves that word.
I don't know. I agree with you. I don't like it either, but man, it just is a hard word to replace.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. So anyway, my friends, that's where we're headed. So we'll start next episode diving into the word blessed, see where that takes us. And anyway, as always, the goal is to orient and continually reorient ourselves around this magnificent person called Jesus, and to be purveyors of kind of hope and beauty in the midst of this world. And for a lot of us, that takes a long, long time to come to grips with sort of dismantling all the stuff that's grown up around Jesus.
Yeah, and it hurts a little bit.
Oh, it does, and it's so disorienting because you feel like, oh, if I lose that, I've lost him, and if it's so brutal. So I don't know. Maybe this helps. Hope it does, but it helps me regardless because I've learned so much just getting ready for it.
Yeah.
All right, Timothy, John, any last words?
Nope, that was a lot of words.
We did a lot of words. I did a lot of words. We don't want that to happen.
Yeah, we do.
I don't know about that. Anyway, friends, until next time, thank you. Find us on Facebook, tweets, Patreon, Instagram, whatever. VoxPodcast.com.
All the places.
Yeah, all the places. Check out Bonnie, check out Gombis. They're awesome. Yeah. See ya.
Thank you for listening to this conversation. The Vox Podcast is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that is supported by listeners like yourself. If you'd like to partner with us, you can do so at patreon.com/Vox Podcast. You can also engage with the hosts on social media at facebook.com/Vox Podcast, on Instagram at Vox Podcast, and on Twitter at Mike Erie. Thank you for walking this road with us.